Marvel's New God, the man who outsmarted the Avengers. Please like, share, and subscribe. Episode 71, Heal? Relic? Hearing what Lin Fan said, his heart suddenly shook. In an instant, his whole person suddenly realized. It is no wonder that the Hand Association has to cross the ocean and come to Hell's Kitchen to open a sub-base. At first, they only thought that it was the Hand Association and wanted to expand the territory. But now it turns out that they have all been deceived. The reason why the Hand Hui came to Hell's Kitchen was entirely to find the keel. Know that keels are very powerful special items. If vibranium makes scientists obsessed, then the keel is a fetish that can make them fall into madness in the eyes of all mysterious side forces. And the stick heard that Lin Fan mentioned the so-called keel ruins? How terrifying should the keel reserves that can be described as ruins? Even a strong person like Lin Fan was attracted here, and the stick was simply unimaginable. It was definitely a terrifying reserve. Keel remains? My lord, Mrs. Gao's whole person was stupid. The remains of the keel are the highest secret of the Hand Rendezvous. Even the 5 leaders of them only recently discovered that they had not been leaked to outsiders at all. But how did Lin Fan know? Especially looking at Lin Fan's attitude, he even knew more than them. This suddenly shocked her beyond belief. Even she thought of more, guessing that the so-called keel relics were definitely not as simple as they realized. But it's a pity that the dragon ruins probably have nothing to do with them. For a while, Mrs. Gao didn't know what it was like to feel. The happiness of the rest of his life after the disaster also became extremely bitter at this moment, and his mood was complicated and inexplicable. How? You don't want to? Seeing that Mrs. Gao did not answer, Lin Fan's tone was slightly heavy. Mrs. Gao's body suddenly trembled. Adults spare their lives, villains dare not disobey adults' orders. I will take you over. As she spoke, she struggled to get up from the ground. But because the actual combat secret technique had consumed too much energy before, as soon as she stood up, she collapsed to the ground with a pop. And his already old appearance also seemed to be more and more decayed at this moment. Apocalypse. Seeing this scene, Lin Fan said casually. The Apocalypse immediately heard the sound and stepped forward. Looking at Mrs. Gao coldly, his pitch-black body separated a tentacle and went straight into Mrs. Gao's body. Immediately after that, the ability of super physique was copied to Mrs. Gao by the 19 Apocalypse. And Mrs. Gao was also quickly reborn. This? Feeling the vitality of the hair change in her body, Mrs. Gao was ecstatic. She couldn't believe how she felt. But soon she raised her head, looked at Lin Fan with a fanatical expression, and bowed. Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord. At this time, Mrs. Gao no longer had any intention of disobeying. It's just that one of Lin Fan's subordinates can give her such a powerful power at will, even compared to the dragon bone. Although she will lose the dominance of the keel ruins, she hugged her thighs. As the saying goes, one person gains the way, and the chicken dog ascends to heaven. With Lin Fan covering him after this, wouldn't no one dare to mess with the hand meeting? Maybe she could even drink some soup along with her. Well, get up. Lin Fan waved his hand indifferently and said, take me to the keel ruins. I don't want to say it a second time, don't delay my time. Yes, my lord. Mrs. Gao was terrified and quickly got up. She explained cautiously, the Dragon Bone ruins are at the Hand Rendezvous station, please come with me, my lord. No thanks. Lin Fan waved his hand casually. Suddenly, the void burst into bursts of sparks. Immediately after that, a portal composed of flames appeared, and on the opposite side of the portal, it was the residence of the Hand Rendezvous in Hell's Kitchen. It was a dilapidated but towering building. Sir, I'll help you lead the way. Mrs. Gao was shocked and quickly walked ahead. The Apocalypse followed suit. Finally, Lin Fan. While stepping over the portal, Lin Fa looked back at Gwen and the others, and then disappeared across the portal. And the sparks that make up the portal also slowly dissipate. Phew. It wasn't until Lin Fan left that the stick let out a long sigh of relief. But then his face was full of misery. The hand clasped the thigh. How will the truth compete with others after this? I just hope that the Hand Rendezvous will not target them in the future. Otherwise, I'm afraid they will all die. Teacher, are you all right? Daredevil saw the worries of the stick and couldn't help but ask with concern. He also guessed what the future might hold. However, in his opinion, Lin Fan did not seem to be a big adulterer, and he should not condone the Hand Association to do whatever he wanted. But this is just wishful thinking on his part, and the future is unknown. I'm fine, let's go back first. The stick waved his hand, unintentionally explaining. He said and wanted to get out of here. As for Gwen, who helped them, he didn't look at him much during the whole process, not even a word of thanks. Only Daredevil said to Gwen when he left, Miss, thank you for helping us before, but superheroes are not something that anyone can do, you are so young, let's go to school first. You. How do you know? Gwen was suddenly shocked when he heard this, and subconsciously took a step back. But then she was embarrassed. I didn't, I just. Let's go first. Daredevil didn't care what Gwen wanted to say, and turned away directly. All he could do was a kind reminder. As for whether Gwen listens or not, that's not something he can control. Soon only Gwen was left standing silently. Looking at the place where Lin Fan disappeared, she recalled in her mind that when she visited the expo that day, Lin Fan was among the invitees. And listening to the comments of the people around him, Lin Fan is the executive director of Stark Industries. She didn't expect Lin Fan to be such a powerful existence. That kind of powerful strength like a god and demon, I am afraid that even if it is a legendary god, it is only that, right? What a mysterious fellow. Muttering a word, Gwen suddenly felt a pang of exhaustion. Today's experience is truly incredible. At this time, she suddenly relaxed, and she suddenly felt tired, and quickly shot out the spider silk and rushed in the direction of home. And he and she made up their minds that they might be able to understand Lin Fan when they had the opportunity. After all, his dad, George, is the city sheriff. At the same time, the Hand Union Station. Under the guidance of Mrs. Gao, Lin Fan and his group of 3 went straight to the cave located underground. It is a place that resembles a natural underground cave. The pitch-black cave is very wide. Lin Fan looked at it at a glance, and estimated that there was 1,000 square meters. At the end of the cave, stands a simple bronze portal with many esoteric runes carved on it. While everyone was walking, Mrs. Gao respectfully introduced and said, "We found this place a few months ago, but no matter what we did, we couldn't break through this bronze door. There should be some kind of strong prohibition on it." Speaking of this, Mrs. Gao felt very tired. The Hand Association paid a huge price for this. But in the end, the dragon bone remains that were hard to find became Lin Fan's bag. Although it feels very pity, it is good that I hugged my thighs. I hope Lin Fan won't turn his face and don't recognize people. And the only thing she can do now is to cooperate with Lin Fan as much as she can, hoping to hug Lin Fan's thigh. Well, there is indeed a ban, and it's quite powerful. Listening to what Mrs. Gao said, Lin Fan nodded lightly. But then he waved his hand casually. Suddenly, the fire appeared, and in the dark cave, an artificial sun suddenly appeared. The cave that had been missing his fingers suddenly became as bright as day. This is a little magic in the supreme law. Shoo. Oh my god, Mrs. Gao didn't know what to do, and her eyes widened suddenly. This method is already otherworldly. Looking at the artificial sun suspended in midair, she was directly stunned, unable to believe what she saw. Is this the world of the strong? It's terrible. In contrast, the apocalypse is relatively indifferent. The master is really a god and a man. Soon, the group of 3 came to the bronze door. Looking at the runes carved on it, Lin Fan's eyes flashed with a different color, and he secretly wondered, who set up this Keel ruin? Lin Fan couldn't help but think of Kunlun. It is said that Kunlun was founded by a group of dragons, and although it is not known whether it is true or not, it is estimated that there is some moisture in it. However, Mrs. Gao's method of using the Keel was indeed brought out of Kunlun. Obviously, Kunlun has a lot of experience in the study of Keels. If he guessed correctly, this dragon bone relic should have been set up by cultivators in the ancient period. After all, in Chinese legends, there are Qi training immortals. It shouldn't be strange for an immortal to kill a divine dragon casually, right? Sir, if we study and study again, we may be able to find a way to break the seal. Seeing that Lin Fan did not react, Mrs. Gao cautiously suggested. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. She also thought that Lin Fan couldn't break the seal. Although she was a little disappointed in her heart, she didn't dare to show it, and even tried to make up for Lin Fan. No need. Ignoring Mrs. Gao's careful thoughts, Lin Fan said indifferently. He actually had some certainty in his heart. When it comes to formations and prohibitions, he really can't outwit him, but this does not affect him to open the lock violently. Unless the prohibition is strong to a certain extent, he really doesn't worry about breaking it. You guys back off. Lin Fan said casually, directly letting the 2 of Apocalypse retreat. Mrs. Gao pushed the letter out more than 10 meters suspiciously. Looking at Lin Fan's back, she couldn't help but feel apprehensive in her heart, but she was very much looking forward to Lin Fan being able to break the seal. Although the Keel has nothing to do with her, she also wants to see the true appearance of the ruins with her own eyes. Buzz. Lin Fan didn't talk nonsense, and summoned the power of the Phoenix with a wave of his hand. This thing is the most top-notch existence. The power of the Phoenix, which began at the beginning of chaos, is an eternal and impermanent existence. One thought can incinerate the original sin of endless beings in the multiverse. A flash of bronze doors. If even this prohibition could not be broken, then the power of the Phoenix would really be waste, and it would not be feared by the ancient mage. Seeing the flames on Lin Fan's fingertips, Mrs. Gao's heart shook. A great look of horror appeared in her eyes. She was already very weak, and at this moment, facing the power of the Phoenix, she felt as if her soul was about to be burned. No wonder. Mrs. Gao had committed evil acts before, and she didn't know how many evil deeds she had committed. The power of the Phoenix is specifically aimed at the original sin of man. I am afraid that only if Lin Fan's mind moves, the power of the Phoenix can ignite Mrs. Gao's soul and annihilate it with the original sin she committed. At this time, even the Apocalypse suddenly felt a huge pressure. And he also realized that his master's strength was becoming more and more terrifying. Go. Break it for me. Lin Fan waved his hand casually, and the power of the Phoenix suddenly roared out. The flames crashed straight into the bronze door. It was like hot oil poured on the flames, and suddenly the flames burst out, and the bronze door instantly burned with monstrous flames. The runes carved on it flashed with spiritual light, constantly moving along the portal. Suddenly, a burst of light burst out from the portal. This is the self-protection function of the ban. At this moment, in the face of the incineration of the power of the Phoenix, the prohibition started on its own, trying to annihilate the power of the Phoenix. But alas, it backfired. In the face of the absolute strength gap, the bronze portal quickly died down. Those runes were directly annihilated into nothingness by the power of the Phoenix. And with the dissipation of the runes, the prohibition sealed on the bronze door was instantly shattered, and the huge portal fell to the ground with a bang. Smoke and dust filled the sky, obscuring the objects that existed behind the bronze door. Mrs. Gao suddenly couldn't help but want to step forward to check. But as strong as Apocalypse and Lin Fan, they could easily see the scene behind the bronze door, and secretly felt a pang of shock. There are such huge dragon beasts on the earth? Apocalypse murmured in disbelief. When she heard this, Mrs. Gao was a little confused at first, but then her eyes widened. I saw that as the smoke and dust dissipated, a huge keel behind the bronze door appeared. It turned out to be a dragon-shaped skeleton that exceeded 100 meters. At this time, on the huge keel, a brilliant white light was emanating, like a treasure that deeply attracted Mrs. Gao's attention. A fatal attraction made Mrs. Gao hate that 240 can rush up and take it for herself. That was her body's fatal thirst for the keel. Mrs. Gao simply couldn't imagine it. If she can refine this keel, how strong her strength should be, and how many years should her life expectancy be extended? You must know that it is only a keel the size of a fingernail, let her live for hundreds of years. Wouldn't this keel make her immortal? For a while, Mrs. Gao was stupid. I really didn't expect that there were such powerful dragon beasts in the world. That once the Earth. Looking at that keel, Lin Fan was also secretly surprised. Earth is a very special being. It seems to be an ordinary planet, but there are such strong people as the ancient mage, and there have even been more top powers. If there was nothing hidden in this, Lin Fan didn't believe it anyway. But he had no way of finding out the truth. However, from the keel in front of him, it can be deduced that the once Earth was absolutely strong like a cloud, and it was a wonderful cultivation prosperous era. It's a pity that on the Earth today, there are only a few people left such as the ancient mage. Tread. At this moment, Tianchi and Mrs. Gao stepped forward. The two also looked longingly at the keel. But they were well aware of their status, and their faces were full of retraction, and they looked at Lin Fan with a respectful expression. Mrs. Gao, it's really thanks to you this time. Lin Fan looked at Mrs. Gao indifferently and said with a bow, for the sake of this keel, I won't kill you, and in the future, you will do things for me. How? Hearing what Lin Fan said, Mrs. Gao was shocked. Lin Fan actually wanted to kill her? But hearing Lin Fan's second half of the sentence, she suddenly felt a burst of ecstasy, and immediately fell to her knees, with a pop. Thank you for sparing your life, the villain is willing to join the adult. Well, wise choice. Lin Fan nodded indifferently. He turned to look at the Apocalypse and said in a loud voice, Apocalypse, you will take over the Hand Association, follow the life of the rebel, and then come here to protect the Dharma for me. Yes, master. The Apocalypse should be respectful, and it is instantaneous. As a former ruler, he certainly heard the deep meaning in Lin Fan's words. Verbal loyalty alone is completely untrustworthy. So Lin Fan's meaning is very simple. Directly use some superpowers to control the entire hand union in your hands, and this can be done once and for all. Mrs. Gao also heard this, but did not dare to cast any disobedience. On the contrary, she had already decided to do things for Lin Fan faithfully, at least ahead of the Alexander guys. What's so bad about being a dog? Didn't you see that when they left, the stick was envious and jealous to death? Mrs. Gao. At this moment, Lin Fan said indifferently, tell me about Kunlun's situation, and the means of using the keel. I think you shouldn't mind, right? Don't mind, villains don't mind. Mrs. Gao was secretly frightened and did not dare to hide the slightest. She was about to know and tell it. And as she spoke, Lin Fan was secretly surprised at the same time, and the system prompt quietly sounded. Ding, the host bursts against the sky and creates itself. Episode 72. Ding, the host has created a new ability, Heaven-Devouring Demon Skill. The icy system prompt sounded quietly. And almost at the same time, in Lin Fan's mind, there was also an introduction to the new ability. The Kunlun Chi Refining Warrior is to breathe the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to feed itself. Therefore, the method of refining chi was created. At this moment, on the basis of the original, Lin Fan burst out against the heavens and created a more powerful, heaven-devouring demon skill. Inspired by a novel he had seen in a previous life. In that novel world, the female emperor forged the immortal chaotic body with the heaven-devouring demon skill and became an immortal. Now Lin Fan's self-created heaven-devouring demon skill is naturally no less impressive. No matter how you say it, this is also a systematic blessing. Just as the so-called system is produced, it must be a fine product, and the power of the heaven-devouring demon skill is beyond doubt. Devouring the heaven-devouring demon skill, devouring and refining all things in the heavens and the earth, and strengthening one's own body. Again, there is no upper limit to this exercise. As long as Lin Fan continued to cultivate, he could strengthen his physical constitution without limit, until he forged an immortal body like a female emperor. And at this time, in front of Lin Fan, there was an excellent opportunity. Keel remains. If it can be completely refined, the superhuman bloodline can definitely be greatly developed. Lin Fan's physique can also be extremely sublimated. It's really worth the trip. Chuckling secretly, Lin Fan was very satisfied with this. Mrs. Gao looked at Lin Fan worriedly at this time. Although he still has use value, everything he can say is finished. What if Lin Fan unloads the grind and kills the donkey? But fortunately, Lin Fan was not that kind of person. Mrs. Gao, I have written down your credit. Lin Fan nodded with a rare smile and said, when this matter is over, you can find the apocalypse and choose a superpower at will, and then you can discuss it yourself. Superpowers? Hearing this, Mrs. Gao was in ecstasy. She excitedly said to Lin Fan, thank you Lord for the gift, thank you Lord for the gift. Well, go down. Lin Fan waved his hand indifferently. Apocalypse was very eye-catching, and directly took Mrs. Gao out of the underground cave. Soon, only Lin Fan was left here. The moment he saw this keel, he thought about the use, and he didn't even want to wait for a moment. Of course, the keel can bring people back from the dead, and even immortality. But that's just an incidental effect of the keel. Instead of keeping the keel, it is better to directly transform the strength, which is the real virtuous circle. As long as his own strength is strong, he can plan for more benefits. Not to mention that at this time, he also created his own heaven-devouring demon skill. As long as the keel is thoroughly refined, the self-constitution is strengthened, and the superhuman bloodline is further developed. His strength can definitely be greatly improved. At that time, even in the face of Thanos and the like, it is especially unknown who is stronger and weaker. Heaven-devouring demon skill, Chi. As soon as his mind moved, Lin Fan immediately operated his ability. Its palm suddenly condensed a black hole, exuding terrifying suction, as if it wanted to devour everything in this world. Immediately afterwards, Lin Fan reached out with both hands and directly ingested the energy in the keel remains. A steady stream of majestic vitality gushed out. Under the pull of the black hole, these energies were directly absorbed by Lin Fan, and then slowly quenched Lin Fan's flesh and blood. Even Lin Fan's superhuman bloodline was frantically devouring these energies. Superman can absorb antimatter in the universe. These pure life energies are not too simple to absorb now, and their efficacy is even more than antimatter energy. With the passage of time, Lin Fan's strength was improving rapidly, at the same time, far beyond the earth. With a flash of thunder, a hammer cut through the void and roared straight towards the earth. And from the depths of that void, a golden figure could be faintly seen. His deep eyes flashed with a hint of weariness. Watching the hammer fly farther and farther, the man waved his hand to disperse the void rift and disappeared. A long sigh could be faintly heard. And on earth, Karmataj, the ancient master, sits quietly in the tea room. But I don't know what she sensed. She raised her eyes to look at the starry sky, and a strange color flashed in her eyes. Mjolnir. Whispering softly, the ancient mage secretly shook his head. Of course she knew about Asgard. But it is difficult for the Qing official to decide the family affairs, and it is the private affairs of Asgard, and it is not her turn for an outsider to dictate. However, this time Odin exiled Thor, and there was indeed some hidden danger. And Earth is not ready to face aliens. If she could, she only hoped that this matter could be resolved peacefully, and there would be no chaos in the middle. In particular, once there is civil unrest in Asgard, it is bound to affect the Earth. It seems that she still can't sit idly by. It is obviously very unrealistic for her to personally contact Thor and help the other party. After all, she also has to deal with threats from multiple dimensions. After some deep groaning, Gooey Mage thought of Lin Fan, and maybe he could ask Lin Fan to help. With the strength and heart of the other party, he can definitely handle this matter well. But what reason should she find to let Lin Fan help? I have already given a gift once, so I can't give it again, although people will definitely not refuse. But the landlord's family has no surplus food. Even the Book of Emperor Weishan was sent, so you can't give Lin Fan the Eye of Agamotto, right? Then I'm afraid Agamotto will jump out of the coffin board in anger. It seems that I can only ask Lin Fan for help with a shy face. Helplessly shook his head, and the ancient mage also complained a little about Odin. You talk about your own family affairs are not handled well. Also exiled Thor to Earth, isn't this a risk transfer, deliberately embarrassing me, fat tiger? Even if we have cooperation, how can you say hello first? You're really not afraid of me, slapped Thor to death, are you? Buzz. At this moment, the void suddenly rippled. Bursts of golden streamers quietly emerged. Seeing this, the ancient mage instantly sensed the source of the vision, and muttered in a low voice, "Hey, it's really Chow Chow. Chow Chow arrived." Sensing Odin's arrival, the ancient mage breathed a sigh of relief. She immediately guessed the other party's intention. First directly exiled Thor, and only after doing it did Odin come to say hello to her. Isn't this a first cut and then a play? Want her to turn a blind eye, really think she is a big wrongdoer? It's not that simple. I just don't know what to find to see Lin Fan. This is not a coincidence, this is not. Odin probably doesn't want his son to be killed, right? Thinking about it in his heart, the corner of Gooey Mage's mouth raised a touch of teasing, and he had already thought about how to rip off the bamboo. But on the surface, she said indifferently to the void, since the Odin God King is here, why didn't he show up? At the same time, far away in a country in Africa, Tony and Banner travel thousands of miles and finally arrive here, ready to deal with the goal of their trip, Ulysses Crow. According to the intelligence investigated by Jarvis, this person's base is nearby. At this time, they were in a remote town. It is precisely because of the remoteness of the town that Ulysses Crow can safely resell arms without worrying about being found by various forces. But Ulysses Crow still overestimated himself, or underestimated the power of artificial intelligence. The role of big data analysis is vividly reflected in Jarvis. Hey, Tony, we seem a little conspicuous? Looking at the simply dressed residents around him, Banner swallowed. At this time, it was as if they were going out with gold bricks. Feeling the wolf-like gazes of those around him, he suddenly felt like a mang, and realized that they were indeed impulsive. Since Ulysses Crow chose this place as his base, he obviously relied on something. Maybe the whole town became his appendage. And the arrival of their two foreigners, and they are so conspicuous, maybe they have been discovered by each other long ago. Let's shoot directly. Tony looked slightly gloomy and pressed the button on his chest directly. Suddenly, countless metal particles emerged from it. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. With the flow of nanoparticles, Tony was quickly covered in a metal armor, and the expressions of everyone around him changed greatly. Enemy. It's the enemy. Informed the boss quickly, there were exclamations from the crowd. But unfortunately, Tony's raised hand was an anesthesia bullet, directly knocking out the person who opened the mouth. For this operation, he was well prepared. Seeing this, Banner on the side also hurriedly moved. He lowered the suitcase to the ground, activated it with fingerprint verification, and stepped on it with both feet. Suddenly, the metal box slowly turned into a combat armor, covering his whole body from his feet. This is exactly the portable armor that Tony has developed. Because nanometal manufacturing is difficult, even with Lin Fan's help, they only created a set of nano armor. The set on Banner was made by Jarvis in a hurry. Anyway, it was just prepared for this operation. When he has enough vibranium, Tony is ready to recreate the full vibranium nano armor, so it is enough to make do with it for the time being. Jarvis, point out where Ulysses Crow is. After solving the surrounding chatter, Tony ordered in a deep voice. The two directly manipulated the warframe to leap up. Under Jarvis's guidance, they soon arrive at a river outside the town, where a base is being built. Dozens of heavily armed guards patrolled back and forth inside the base. Even Tony and Banner were condescending and saw the presence of tanks. It can be seen that Ulysses Crow's big hand. Being able to resell a heavy firepower weapon such as a tank shows the strength of Ulysses' claw, and it is no wonder that he can hold more than 200 pounds of vibranium. Tony, I think we should make a plan. Banner reminded with a solemn expression. The plan is to kill it. Tony said indifferently, moving without the slightest hesitation. He directly manipulated the armor to fall from the sky. In the face of those heavily armed guards, he was even more merciless, and when he raised his hand, a palm thunder roared out. Suddenly, a group of people were directly overturned to the ground. Tony, on the other hand, reversed direction and continued to attack the guards on the other side. Enemy attack. Enemy attack, the rest of the survivors screamed after realizing it. It's just a pity that they reacted a beat slower. With Banner close behind, the two quickly settled all their enemies without even being threatened. Even if heavy firepower is used, it may not be able to threaten the two of them. Nanometals infused with vibranium are not vegetarian. Even the armor on Banner's body is absolutely impossible to threaten life without using heavy firepower such as missiles. Well done, Banner. Swinging his fist at Banner, Tony said proudly, look what I say, as long as we solve all the enemies, our plan is perfect. Ahaha, Tony, you're right. Banner laughed dryly, still a little unbearable. After all, that's all human life. But now that the enemy is opposing us, either you die or I die, and he doesn't have much to say. Then do you have me in your plans? At this moment, an icy voice suddenly sounded. Tony and Banner were shocked. The two quickly turned to look at the owner of the voice, but what they saw was an attack, glowing with raging thunder. The electric light burst out and slammed into Tony. Suddenly, the sparks of the explosion burst out in all directions. Tony's whole person flew out directly and fell to the ground fiercely, looking very embarrassed. Tony, are you all right? Banner was shocked and quickly dodged in front of Tony. And he finally saw the appearance of the sneak attacker. I saw that the other party looked gloomy, and his burly body was very strong, especially a mechanical arm was particularly eye-catching. They couldn't help but think of what Lin Fan said before leaving. Lin Fan once said that Ulysses Crow was very dangerous and must be careful to deal with it. Looking at it now, the other party is really not an ordinary person. It's a pity that they just talked and didn't notice the arrival of Ulysses Crow, which caused Tony to be temporarily unaffected by the sneak attack. Damn bastards. I'll kill you, suddenly Tony's angry voice sounded. Confident as him, he was actually attacked by Ulysses Crow. Of course, he couldn't swallow this breath. What's more, it was still in the case that Lin Fan had reminded them a long time ago. If Lin Fan knew about this matter, it would definitely be a mockery. Where would he put his face at that time? Yikes. Tony's figure roared out, and more than a dozen miniature missiles were directly shot out from his shoulder. The advantage of the nano warframe is portability, but the disadvantages are also obvious. The first is that the means of attack are very scarce. In addition to palm mines, the main ones are satellite missiles at the shoulder position, and super electromagnetic guns in the chest position. And once the ammunition reserves are exhausted, he can only engage in close combat with the enemy. A dozen miniature missiles rushed straight towards the attackers. The missile with its own locking function is very fast, and it will come to the front in the blink of an eye, and it will explode in the next second. But Ulysses Crow reacted extremely quickly, and directly rolled a lazy donkey and dodged. A dozen missiles exploded directly into the buildings behind them. Suddenly, the entire base was full of smoke and ruins. And taking advantage of this opportunity, Ulysses Crow's figure flickered and went straight to Tony and Banner. His body has been modified, Zhao Li's, and equipped with an artificial exoskeleton. This is also his capital for mixing arms sales. He also has to thank Wakanda, who gave him the startup capital to reinvent himself as he pleased. But he also lost an arm because of it. Give me death. Looking at the enemy who invaded his base, Ulysses Crow was angry. With an angry blow, he slammed into Banner in front of him. The robotic arm flashed with cold light, and the claws made of vibranium had unparalleled destructive power. Just an easy grasp broke the armor defense on Banner's body. Shoo! The blade entered his body, and Banner exhaled in pain. Tony desperately tried to help. But Banner and Ulysses Crow were so close that he did not dare to use thermal weapons, so he could only rush over and try to force Ulysses Crow back at close range. And Ulysses Crow also understands these well, and directly uses King Banner Chin to circle the column. And while flashing and moving, he also launched attacks one after another, tearing the armor on Banner's body apart. Naturally, Banner in the battle armor was not spared, and there were several more scars on his body again. Only Banner's wounded world was reached. Damn it. Seeing this scene, Tony was furious. But in terms of combat ability alone, he was obviously inferior to Ulysses Crow, and could only watch Banner get injured. Fortunately, Banner knew that he had become a burden and did not continue to be stubborn. He cried out in pain and said, "Help me, Hulk! Now it's your turn to play, roar, roar." Almost at the same time as the words sounded, the Hulk, who had long been impatient, roared angrily. He did not hesitate to seize control of his body. As his body continued to expand, the Hulk directly burst the armor open, and a sandbag-sized fist roared out. Ulysses Crow didn't notice and was directly grabbed by the Hulk's shoulder. Then he suddenly felt that the whole hot sky was spinning. Hulk carried his body like a chicken, repeatedly pouring it up and down, left and right. The famous scene that belonged to Loki was born. Episode 73, just as the Hulk hangs Ulysses Crow. Far away at an altitude of 10,000 meters, an optical stealth fighter roared, and the speed even exceeded the speed of sound. On the fighter, a man in a black costume looked slightly gloomy. In the driver's seat sat a bald woman. Prince, Ulysses Claw is very cunning, and has undergone body enhancement transformation. You must be able to deal with it carefully. Looking at the man, the woman solemnly admonished. Well, I know. The man nodded indifferently and said in a deep voice, this person harmed my people, robbed vibranium, and his crime is unforgivable. I must personally capture him back. At the same time, the fighter plane has already arrived at its destination. But suddenly the woman exclaimed, wait. What is that, huh? The man was surprised when he heard this, and quickly looked at the projection screen. That's what the radar scans in real time. I saw that at this time, in the picture, the base of Ulysses' claw had been reduced to ruins, as if it had just been washed by war. And a powerful green monster is pressing Ulysses' claw to the ground and rubbing it. Next to him stood a guy in metal armor. This sudden scene suddenly made the man's face sink slightly, and he wondered, who are they? Why did you make a move on Ulysses' crow? No, I can't let them kill Ulysses. Saying that, he looked at the woman and ordered in a deep voice, open the hatch, I'm going down. The prince must not. When the woman heard this, she quickly stopped it. The one wearing the armor is most likely Tony Stark, the ruler of Stark Industries, and the other person is unknown. If we rashly break out a conflict with the other party, it will be very unfavorable to us. Wakanda. Prince, you don't want Wakanda to be made public, do you? As soon as these words came out, the man's movements were sluggish. But then he said in a deep voice, I don't want you to feel, I want me to feel. I'm wearing a panther suit, and they definitely won't recognize me. Saying that, he also ignored the woman's dissuasion and directly opened the door of the fighter cabin. Immediately afterwards, he jumped directly from a height of 10,000 meters. The howling wind was hunting, and the man's gaze was resolute, and he must not let Ulysses' crow die at the hands of others. This person absolutely has to apologize for his evil deeds in the holy land of Wakanda. And the identity of the man is self-evident. It is none other than the Prince of Wakanda, T'Challa. At the same time, the interior of the base below. Alright, Hulk. Seeing that Ulysses' crow was about to be killed, Tony quickly spoke up to stop it. They still have to find each other to force the whereabouts of vibranium. If this is killed by the Hulk, the location of the vibranium can't let them look for it aimlessly, right? 700 roar. Hulk retorted with a screaming of dissatisfaction. But he didn't strike again. Throwing Ulysses' crow on the ground as if throwing garbage, the Hulk returned control of his body instead. The huge body slowly shrunk, and finally changed into the appearance of Banner. But at this time, Banner felt cold. Looking down, Banner was immediately dumbfounded, and quickly covered the key part with his hand. Poof. Tony couldn't help it. He casually picked up a dress from the garbage heap, which looked a little tattered. Banner did not dislike it, and quickly took it and put it on. Tony walked over to Ulysses' crow. Ulysses' crow. He crouched down and looked down at the other party, and said in a deep voice, tell me where the vibranium is, I'll only give you one chance, either say it or. Saying that, Tony directly raised his palm and aimed it at Ulysses' claw's head. Wisps of energy slowly circulate in the palm of his hand. Ulysses' crow, who was paralyzed on the ground, frowned wildly. A threat called death strikes. But hearing what Tony said, he was even more shocked that the other party came here. It was actually for the vibranium in his hand? But the fact that he has a large amount of vibranium in his hands is not known to a second person at all. So how does this person in front of you know? Born as cunning as him, he subconsciously wanted to quibble, but as soon as the words came to his lips, he swallowed them back. Tony's flashing palm is no joke. He had no doubt that the other party was ruthless. Didn't you look at the big green monster just now, almost killed him? I surrender. I confessed this time. After a moment of hesitation, Ulysses' crow chose to surrender. This is his only option now. In the face of powerful forces such as Tony and Banner, if he dares to refuse, the final result will only be death on the spot. Although vibranium is tempting, his little life is more important. Choose wisely. Tony said indifferently and directly picked up Ulysses' crow. The group of three soon arrived somewhere outside the base. It looks ordinary here, with nothing but a big bare tree. Right here. Ulysses' crow pointed to the big tree and said, all the vibranium has been buried under the tree by me, you can dig it up. Banner. Tony turned to look at Banner. Knowing Ulysses' crow's cunning, he would not easily believe the other party's words. Banner immediately walked quickly under the tree. Hey, it's time to change clothes again. Sighing secretly, Kafa, Banner called out to Hulk in his heart. Suddenly, a roar of dissatisfaction sounded. But in the face of Banner's request, Hulk did not refuse, and reappeared and began diligent digging. He directly came and uprooted the big tree. The corners of Tony's mouth twitched when he saw the scene. Hulk, this guy. Can't mess with it, can't afford to mess with it, shoo. Ulysses Crow had palpitations. Fortunately, he chose to cooperate and did not lie, otherwise it was his body that would be torn apart. After the Hulk's violent excavation, the ground revealed large pits. There are 3 big boxes inside. The Hulk roughly smashed open the box, and it was really vibranium, and it was not damaged in the slightest under the Hulk's attack. Found it. Sure enough, vibranium. Tony was overjoyed and said to the Hulk, "Hulk, dig up all the vibranium, please." Roar. Hulk snorted coldly, not paying attention to Tony's tone. He dug and planed to get the vibranium out. 3 pieces of vibranium, and it was still in a very primitive form, as if it had just been dug out of a pit. Seeing this, Tony was deeply surprised, and couldn't help but think of what Lin Fan said. Does vibranium really have a whole vein? If he had doubts before, but now the evidence is in front of him. And doesn't he still carry a party in his hand? Ulysses Crow. Throwing Ulysses Crow to the ground, Tony asked in a deep voice, "Where did you get these vibraniums? If I'm not mistaken, these vibraniums should have been violently dug from the pit, right?" This. Ulysses Crow hesitated. Regarding the existence of Wakanda, he certainly did not want to tell more people. After all, this is the only source of vibranium. Isn't the reason why he easily agreed to Tony because he knew that Wakanda had more vibranium, and there was a chance to get it again in the future? But if the existence of Wakanda is exposed, then he will no longer be of use. It is even very likely to be killed by the person in front of you. How? You'd better think before answering. Tony's tone was unkind, and he was ready to raise his hand. The Hulk on the side also roared angrily. "Don't do it, I say." Ulysses Claw's body trembled suddenly, and he quickly begged for mercy. "Please spare your life, I am willing to tell you the source of vibranium, but you must promise not to kill me." Now he had no choice but to answer all of Tony's questions. He only hoped that the other party would let him go afterwards. "Say," Tony said lightly. Ulysses Crow sighed secretly, and quickly explained, "These vibranium were indeed violently mined by me with explosives. Just a dozen years ago, I was in Wacken." "Stop. You bastard." At this moment, an icy roar sounded. Ulysses Crow's words were interrupted directly. And as the sound sounded, a sharp spear tore through the air and roared, pointing directly at Ulysses Claw's head. At the same time, far away in New York, where Hell's Kitchen is located. After a day of cultivation, at this time, the remains of the dragon bone had shrunk severely, leaving only a dozen meters in size. You must know that the remains of the keel were more than 100 meters high before. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Obviously, with Lin Fan's refining, the energy in the keel remains was frantically absorbed. And Lin Fan also got a huge improvement in this process. Buzz. Lin Fan's body was like a dragon roaring, and bursts of divine power emanated. Outside the ruins, the Apocalypse Protector's brows jumped wildly. Feeling the terrifying aura on Lin Fan's body, he thought that he was the god of mutants, and at this moment he felt as small as an ant. He couldn't imagine how powerful his master was now. Could it be that he has become a legendary true god? Not to mention the mental activity of the Apocalypse. At this time, Lin Fan's cultivation also reached a critical moment. Superhuman bloodline has already devoured abundant energy. In particular, the majestic vitality in the keel constantly strengthened the superhuman bloodline, making Lin Fan's strength increase by leaps and bounds. At this time, the quantitative change has reached a qualitative change, and the superhuman bloodline has also been sublimated to the extreme. Ding, the host superhuman bloodline has reached the limit. Upgrade to Silver Super Bloodline. The cold system prompt sounded quietly. But Lin Fan, who was in cultivation at this time, had no intention of worrying about these at all, but focused on the stabilization of his brand new strength. The improvement brought by the keel remains was too huge, which made him a little unexpected. It's like a child mastering the power of an adult. If you can't control it, it is bound to cause great damage and even endanger yourself. But fortunately, Lin Fan has enough abilities. With the cooperation of many abilities, he is consolidating his realm step by step, and his new strength is gradually being completely mastered by him. At this time, Lin Fan was already incarnated as a human Superman, and his body contained terrifying explosive power. Every breath and breath is filled with endless breath of life. Even to say something without exaggeration. If ordinary people can smell it, they will live a long life and be 100 years old, and they will definitely eliminate all diseases in the second half of their lives. And this can also see that Lin Fan has not completely controlled his strength. The absorbed keel energy is easily leaked out. But fortunately, Lin Fan had time, and he could refine slowly until all his strength was congregated. And this process actually did not waste too much of Lin Fan's time. With the continuous operation of the heaven-devouring demon skill, the only remaining dragon bone remains, the speed of shrinking gradually slowed down. But the energy in Lin Fan's body was all refined and integrated into his body. Of course, more of them were absorbed by the silver super bloodline. As the terrifying aura around Lin Fan's body converged, and this cultivation also came to an end, Lin Fan slowly opened his eyes. Thousands of visions flashed in his eyes, but they disappeared in an instant. Just like Lin Fan, he was like an ordinary young man. Phew. Exhaling, Lin Fan twisted his body. A sound of bone rubbing sounded. Feeling the powerful and boundless power in his body, Lin Fan suddenly felt comfortable, and he wanted to find someone to vent fiercely. But at this moment, invisible ripples suddenly appeared in the void. A burst of sparks slowly appeared to form a circle. Well, Ancient One Mage? Seeing this portal, Lin Fan was secretly surprised. Haven't they just met? How come it was only a day or two after this, the Ancient Mage came to him again? Could it be because he knew that he had refined the keel? But think about it, you must know that his strength is now improving by leaps and bounds. The Silver Great Super Bloodline is already invincible in the world. If this can be developed to the extreme, punching the Ancient Mage and kicking Thanos, it is simply not too simple. Even now, he can face Thanos without falling behind. Maybe the Ancient Mage came because of this. But no matter what the purpose of the Ancient Mage was, he looked extremely indifferent at this time, and there was no such thing as nervousness at all. And as the portal opened, the situation on the other side also appeared under his eyes. Mr. Lin, congratulations. On the opposite side of the portal, the Ancient Mage looked at Lin Fan with a smile. The shock on her face could not be concealed in the slightest. Obviously, for Lin Fan's strength, and even the speed of improvement of his strength, even she felt extremely shocked. You must know that even she felt a faint threat at this time. This shows that Lin Fan's strength is no longer weaker than him. Even if it's not bad, it's not much worse. Looking at Lin Fan with a look of amazement, the Ancient Mage bowed his head slightly, and said sincerely, King Odin wants to invite you, I don't know? Listening to what the Ancient Mage said, Lin Fan did not respond. He just looked at the opposite side of the portal lightly. I saw that at this time, on the opposite side, an old man in a Chinese costume was silently sitting opposite the Ancient Mage. If he didn't know the identity of the other party, I'm afraid Lin Fan would only think that he was a kind old man. But in fact, the identity of the other party is very extraordinary. King of the Asgardians. The man known as Odin, the God King. Once the power of the other family, conquered the 9 realms, and made a name for himself in the interstellar. But at this time, Odin was like a grandfather next door. Why is Odin looking for me? Muttering secretly, Lin Fan remained silent on the surface. He walked slowly into the portal. And at the same time, seeing the spear whistling, Ulysses Crow was going to be killed on the spot in the next second. Not good. Tony was shocked and quickly tried to pull Ulysses Crow away. But his movements were still a step slower. The spear was extremely fast, directly penetrating Ulysses Crow's left shoulder, easily penetrating the entire body. Ulysses Crow's left shoulder was suddenly bloodied. Shoo! What a sharp weapon. Seeing this, Tony's pupils suddenly shrank sharply. Although this weapon was a cold weapon, it was very destructive, and he could tell at a glance that it was made of vibranium. With dozens of pounds of vibranium, just to create a cold weapon spear. Such a big deal made him speechless. But at this time, he couldn't help but marvel, and quickly blocked in front of Ulysses' claw, looking at the person who made the move with a solemn expression. In contrast, the Hulk doesn't have as many scruples. He jumped up directly and slammed into the person who sneaked up. Hulk, be careful. Seeing that the visitor was wearing a black battle suit, Tony quickly reminded. He could see at a glance that the opponent's battle suit was not simple. Even if he is not mistaken, it is also made of vibranium, and it is nano-vibranium. Isn't that what he longs for? Use vibranium to convert into nanometal to create a nano-warframe. Such a large amount of money can no longer be described as luxury. Whether it is the spear made of vibranium or the nano-suit worn on the body, it all shows the identity of the person. Even he had a faint premonition in his heart. The identity of the person in front of him may have something to do with Ulysses Crow's unfinished words. Lin Fan must also know the origin of vibranium and this person. Humph. At this moment, Chala shouted angrily. He waved his hand to retrieve the vibranium spear and faced the incoming Hulk without the slightest idea of dodging. The spear shimmered with cold in his hand, full of destructive power. He shot out again and stabbed at the Hulk. Episode 74, Roar. In the face of the little bug's provocation, the Hulk roared again and again. He didn't know what to fear. Even when he saw the spear coming, Hulk did not dodge at all, and directly smashed towards Chala with a punch. Just as the so-called one force breaks 10,000 laws, no one can block his sandbag-sized fist. If there is, then 2 punches. Humph. Faced with this blow, Chala snorted disdainfully. He admits that the Hulk is indeed powerful. But he knows more deeply the power of vibranium, especially when it is made by top craftsmen, and it is by no means as simple as a cold weapon. Even as a cold weapon, it is definitely the most top-notch divine weapon in this world. Hulk's flesh-mortal fetus is definitely unable to block the spear's attack. It's over. Hulk, be careful, Tony's anxious yelp rang out, trying to stop the Hulk. But alas, his reaction was a beat slower. With the roar of the spear, it easily pierced the Hulk's fist, and strands of green blood flowed out. Even if it is as powerful as the Hulk, it can't stop the attack of the vibranium spear at all. The pain caused an angry roar to come out of Hulk's mouth. Hulk, angry. The Hulk's already hideous face became more and more distorted. He stared at the little bug in front of him, and regardless of the attack again, he tried to punch Chala to death. It's just that Chala reacted quickly and dodged very sensitively. The Panther suit has greatly increased his physical fitness. Although there is no way to be tough with the Hulk, if it comes to reaction, the Hulk is not comparable to him in any way. Chala moves flexibly, and the vibranium spear continues to pierce straight out. Several more wounds suddenly appeared on Hulk's body, and strange blood flowed down his body. This also infuriated the Hulk even more. Stimulated by anger, Hulk's body soared by 3 points again, and his body even emitted a terrifying anger. Chala couldn't help but be secretly frightened, and became more cautious in her shots. Even in an instant, it was his turn to be worried. Because he felt the power of the Hulk, he knew that even if he had a Black Panther suit, he might not be able to block this guy's fist. At the same time, Tony on the side finally reacted. Damn bastard. Scolding angrily, Tony also joined the fray. How could he have allowed Chala to do his way? Originally, they moved very smoothly, and 200 pounds of vibranium had already arrived, but who knew that they would suddenly kill Qing Yanjin halfway? But no matter what identity Chala is, he will not have the slightest scruples. Heaven is not afraid, and no one can make him feel jealous. Of course, except for Lin Fan, who can control the magnetic field. Lin Fan's ability naturally restrained him, and unless he developed an anti-Lin Fan battle armor, he couldn't do anything at all. Yikes. The performance of the nano armor is very strong, and Tony came to the two in an instant. But just as he was about to strike against Chala, the huge Hulk turned around, smashed Tony straight out, and then cast a chaotic cloak punch towards Chala. The Tony man in the distance was dumbfounded, rolled over from the ground with a black face, and stood up. Hey, Hulk, can you pay attention? Tony couldn't help but complain. But seeing that Hulk was played by Chala, he sighed helplessly and could only find the opportunity to strike again. Don't be afraid of opponents like gods, but teammates like pigs. Hulk, this guy is really undisciplined. If you talk about fighting alone, there are really few people who are Hulk's opponents, but they joined forces against the enemy. Thinking of being smashed by the Hulk's punch just now, Tony said that it was better to forget it. He didn't want to die at the hands of his teammates. Looking at Chala at this time, Tony couldn't help but observe the details of the other party while looking for the opportunity. The Panther suit on Chala is very sophisticated, and the technology content far exceeds today's technology. Even the forces behind the other party were able to nano-vibranium. What a powerful piece of technology this must be. You must know that even he, even with nanotechnology, used Lin Fan's superpower to create nanometals. But the strength behind this person can produce such a sophisticated nanosuit. The technical content required is more demanding. Could it be that the forces behind this person have something to do with Lin Fan? Or is it a more powerful being? Tony was shocked in his heart, and always felt that this matter involved a lot of water. It is no wonder that Lin Fan was silent when he talked about it. Even Karmatage, who can cultivate mages, has it, and the existence of such an organization with powerful technology is not unacceptable. But such a secret organization, no one in the whole world knows about it. For a while, Tony couldn't help but feel his heart jumping. The world is so dangerous. It seems that after he goes back, he must ask Lin Fan clearly, and at the same time speed up the research and development process of the nano armor. At this moment, the battle in front of him suddenly changed. I saw that Chala suddenly reacted a beat slower. And taking advantage of this opportunity, the Hulk directly slammed down with a punch, and suddenly Chala was like an upside-down kite. After slamming a large tree, Chala slipped to the ground. He was half-kneeling and coughing constantly. Abominable. This monster is so strong, can they only let them snatch the vibranium today? Chala was furious, but he felt a little powerless. This big green guy is like a turtle. It was obviously stabbed all over the body by the vibranium spear, but the stun did not weaken anything, but it made the other party even more angry. Not to mention that there are guys in battle armor on the side. In the face of the threat of these two people, even he did not know how to deal with it for a while. But it is obviously impossible to let the other party take the vibranium. Buzz. Boom. At this moment, there was a whistling sound in the sky. Immediately after that, with the fierce wind, a fighter appeared and directly suspended at an altitude of more than 10 meters. And on that fighter, more than a dozen hideous muzzles were directly revealed. Bursts of brilliant blue energy accumulated at the muzzle. Tony had no doubt that once the fighter attacked, it would be easy to raise the place. Generous gift crab. They even have such sophisticated fighters? Looking at the fighter, Tony's face was solemn to the extreme. He didn't even notice the presence of a fighter at all. Obviously, the fighter is equipped with optical stealth, as well as shielding radar perception, and even the most terrifying thing is the weapon system. It turned out to be an energy weapon that often appears in science fiction. The technology possessed by the enemy once again refreshed his cognition. Now facing the cannon port of the black hole, Tony knows that he may be able to escape, but Hulk will definitely not be able to escape. Even if it is as powerful as the Hulk, it will definitely only be the result of becoming a live target. It's bad, it looks like it's kicked to the iron plate. Tony's heart was heavy, and he was thinking frantically about how to break the game. Chala on the opposite side was relieved. Thanks, Oki. Chala said into the communication. Although he felt that the victory was invincible, he couldn't care so much in order to keep the vibranium from being taken away by outsiders, and even catch the murderer of the people of Wakanda. Meeting Hulk's angry gaze, Chala walked slowly to stand in front of the two. I have no intention of being an enemy of you. Chala spoke in a deep voice, and said in an unquestionable tone, but the vibranium does not belong to you. Ulysses Crow is a wanted criminal, and I hope that the two can take the initiative to leave. He actually had no intention of killing them all. This is not only because he is kind in nature and does not want to commit murder, but also because he does not want to expose the existence of Wakanda. Because he knows very well that the person inside the armor is the famous Tony Stark. Once the other party dies here, the consequences will be unimaginable. If he could, he hoped that Tony Stark would leave wisely, or he would have to resort to last resort. Impossible. Hearing what Chala said, Tony directly refused. The Hulk let out an angry roar. Even in the face of the threat of artillery fire, he did not have the slightest fear, and even jumped to blow up the plane. But Tony knew the weight, and slowly walked to the front and said in a deep voice, "People can be handed over to you, but vibranium is my booty, we must take it." Impossible. Chala refused. Vibranium is unique to Wakanda, and once it is lost, it will only cause more people to covet vibranium. If it leads to the exposure of Wakanda, the consequences are unimaginable. So he must not let Tony take the vibranium. But how could Tony let go? You meow people also want to take away, vibranium also want to take away, isn't this bullying honest people? We were busy for a long time, and in the end we couldn't get anything, right? So there's no more to talk about? Tony said quietly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. He's not the kind of person who looks ahead. Even if I know that the enemy is strong and I am weak, if I really tear my face, who can laugh until the end is unknown? People and vibranium, I want them all. Feeling the slaughter of the atmosphere, Chala did not give in the slightest. And the air also solidified in an instant. It seems that as long as there is a little Mars, it can directly explode, and the battle of life and death is about to break out. And right now. Even if his own side fell into the downwind, Tony secretly said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, contact Lin Fan quickly." "Yes, sir." Jarvis answered and immediately called Lin Fan's number. It's a pity that the phone is on a busy tone. No matter how Jarvis called for help, or even remotely located Lin Fan's location, there was no result at all. "Sir, Mr. Lin is not in the service area, I can't locate the position to love him," Jarvis said in an icy mechanical voice. "Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network." What? Hearing this, Tony people were dumbfounded. Boy. How can you not be in the service area at this critical time? Aren't we going to be desperate? For a while, Tony's already bad mood became worse and worse, and he also made up his mind to fight to the death. Even if he dies today, he will definitely not give in to Chala. Hulk. Tony immediately prepared to strike blatantly. But at this moment, before he could open his mouth to remind Hulk, a disdainful female voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Okay, don't be stubborn." The host came very quickly. The moment the voice sounded, Tony was stunned. When did Jarvis change his voice? Zero asked for flowers, and if he heard correctly, the other party mentioned the so-called master, so who is the master? Jarvis, what's going on? Tony called out to Jarvis. But no matter how he called, Jarvis didn't respond, as if he had broken the signal. "Don't bark, he's been temporarily locked up by me." At this moment, the female voice sounded again. "I am the Master's artificial intelligence Red Queen, your situation, I have reported to the Master, he will come to rescue you soon." What? Artificial intelligence Red Queen? Your Master. When Tony heard this, everyone immediately became numb. You must know that his Jarvis is already the top in the world, and even the military can easily hack in. But the other party could easily lock Jarvis up. This shows the strength of the other party's hacking methods. And most importantly, the owner mentioned in the other party's mouth. He thought about it, he could only think that there was one and only one person. Lin Fan? Suddenly, Tony only felt his heart tremble. I thought that Lin Fan was just a strong superpower, but I didn't expect to master nanotechnology. Now it also has artificial intelligence far beyond Jarvis. Even Lin Fan knew the existence of the ancient first mage. Obviously, in Lin Fan's body, there were still many secrets that he did not know, and even the truth of this world was involved. Phew. Taking a deep breath to calm his mood, Tony smiled wryly. It turns out that the clown has always been himself. The world he thinks is only one-sided, and this world is far from as simple as he realizes. But this is clearly not the time to dwell on these. Queen Red, you release Jarvis first. In case of a fight, I still have to ask him to assist in the battle. Tony quickly said to the Red Queen. Cut. But who knew that the Red Queen said with disdain, what's the use of that guy being dumbfounded, just rest assured. I've hacked into that warplane, you'll be fine. When Tony heard this, he was immediately speechless. What else could he say? Even according to the other party's meaning, Lin Fan didn't use it, because it was completely unnecessary. There is no threat from fighters, and T'Challa is not yet in his eyes. And he was even more shocked by the intelligence of the Red Queen. Can quietly hack into the fighter system, the other party has not found anything, you call this artificial intelligence? Isn't Jarvis an artificial retard? Jarvis, are you polite? Just when Tony was in a mixed mood, T'Challa complained, How do you think about it? I don't want a conflict to break out, but if necessary, I don't mind solving the trouble by force. Humph. Then give it a try. Tony, who had the confidence, snorted disdainfully. This guy is really arrogant. I thought he was already very infuriating, but when he saw T'Challa today, he knew what disgusting people are. If he couldn't vent it, he was really worried that he would be suffocated to death. Since that's the case, then there's nothing more to say. T'Challa shook her head helplessly and said in a deep voice, Okay, let's shoot. Time passes minute by minute. To T'Challa's embarrassment, Oki, who had been supposed to support him at any time, suddenly did not react. Subconsciously looked back at the fighter, and the T'Challa people were stupid. Because at this time, the muzzle of the cannon was actually aimed at him? Nanny? Oki rebelled? For a moment, the T'Challa people were stupid and didn't know what was going on. On the contrary, Tony laughed proudly, Ha ha ha, nice job after Red. Unexpectedly, Lin Fan actually has such an artificial intelligence as you. Humph. The thunder voice of the Red Queen sounded. Only at this time, T'Challa finally realized the problem, and her face became solemn. The good situation turned around in an instant, and now it was his turn to be dumbfounded. How? Do you have anything else to say? Tony said with a sneer. You. T'Challa was furious. But in the face of Tony and Banner, as well as the threat of gunfire from his own fighters, he was stunned and couldn't say a tough word. Because he is well aware of the destructive power of his own fighters. Once he provokes the other party, this cannon down, he will not die or be crippled. He suddenly gave birth to a soft mind. Nope. No way, but as soon as this idea came out, he threw it away. The people of Wakanda will never be slaves. Even if he knows that 10 dead and lifeless, he must not give in, otherwise what is the difference between him and a coward? Even if he dies today, he must not let the little ones see the joke. If you want to fight, you. T'Challa gripped the vibranium spear and said in a deep voice. Seeing this, Tony was speechless. In fact, he doesn't want to kill T'Challa, after all, the other party has an extraordinary background, who knows what trouble it will cause. And it's all this kind of time, can't you be soft? What should he do now? But at this moment, a red arbitrary door suddenly appeared, startling everyone present. Immediately after the portal was pushed open, Lin Fan slowly walked out of it. Okay, stop. Episode 75, go back half an hour. Far away in Karmatage, Lin Fan came here through the portal. Ancient Mage and Odin smiled and bowed, welcome Mr. Lin. Have a seat, Lin Xiao is friendly. Odin secretly looked at Lin Fan, his eyes were extremely deep. He was very curious about Lin Fan. In the chat with Gui just now, the other party's words were full of admiration for Lin Fan, and even said something secretly. At first, he didn't care much, but at this time, he was secretly frightened. Because Lin Fan gave him a very big threat. It was as if a conflict broke out, Lin Fan could threaten his life. And this can only say one thing. That is, Lin Fan seems young, but his strength is no less than that of these old guys. He didn't even know why, he always felt that Lin Fan's gaze was very subtle. He always felt that he had no secrets in front of Lin Fan. This feeling he had only experienced in the Ancient Mage. But why did Lin Fan give him this feeling? Odin didn't understand, but this made him even more curious about Lin Fan's identity. This person was definitely not as simple as it seemed. Mage, Odin, it's nice to meet the two. Lin Fan also smiled and nodded, indifferent but polite. Although I don't know why Odin suddenly appeared. But just after a little thought, he guessed the possible situation, and he muttered secretly in his heart. If that guy is coming, maybe it's an opportunity. After all, the mechanism of the system is strong when it is strong. Of course, if you can trigger a reward on Odin, it will be great. Thinking so in his heart, Lin Fan sat down opposite the two. And the ancient mage also immediately said, Mr. Lin, I invited you to come over today. It is actually the Odin God King who wants to meet you. I'll tell you about it. Odin took the initiative to speak, looked at Lin Fan and asked. 690 dares to ask Lin Fan, has he ever learned about the current situation in Asgard? I've heard about it. Lin Fan nodded indifferently and was non-committal. He doesn't take the initiative. Not to mention that they are now at the same level of existence. Just to find others to help, you must have the attitude of taking the initiative to ask for people. Hey, it's really ugly. Odin also didn't care about Lin Fan's coldness, and sighed. It's not a secret, because of my personal reasons, all 3 children have been raised by me, and now there is no way to save them, hey. Saying that, Odin sighed again, his face full of helplessness and bitterness. Ancient Mastery added indifferently on the side, I don't blame you, but the way you treat them is indeed debatable. What the ancient mage said. Odin nodded and did not refute. He went on to explain, not long ago, my incomplete son Thor led someone to Jotunheim behind my back, almost triggering a war between the 2 races. Thor is the next generation of God King candidates, but he is so reckless, how can he protect the people of Asgard? As soon as I was angry, I took the opportunity to seal his divine power and exiled him to Earth. But Thor is my biological son after all, and I know very well that with his character, it is difficult to pay attention to my test. So. Speaking of his son, Odin felt extremely tired. How did he give birth to such a reckless man? Asgard has finally ushered in peace, seemingly prosperous, but it is just a castle in the clouds. But Sol is good, but he is crazy to do things, and make enemies for Asgard. Isn't this forcing Asgard into Ragnarok? If it weren't for the fact that Thor was his son, he would definitely have tortured and cut the other party by 1,000 cuts to vent his hatred. Now exiling Thor to Earth, I also hope that Thor can understand a truth. With great power comes great responsibility. What about Loki? Faced with Odin's explicit instructions, Lin Fan did not answer the rhetorical question. As far as I know, the reason why the God King is so sad is not only because Thor is not a weapon, right? When Odin heard this, everyone was stupid. How did Lin Fan know so much? To know about Loki, only a very small number of people know, let alone the relationship between Thor and Loki. How did Lin Fan know these private family matters so clearly? Could it be that Lin Fan is also the same as the ancient mage? Lin Xiaoyu is right. Forced down in surprise, Odin shook his head and said, because of something, Loki has been having a tantrum with us lately, and he always feels that he is more suitable than Thor to inherit the throne, but in fact his personality is not suitable at all. Nope. I think Loki is just right. Hearing what Odin said, Lin Fan directly denied it. Odin suddenly asked with a puzzled look, how do you say that? My family knows what is going on. Although Loki is a little clever, he is too selfish to protect the whole of Asgard. In contrast, Thor is very righteous and should be a good monarch. But it just needs to be polished. Isn't the Odin God King himself very clear? Meeting Odin's gaze, Lin Fan said indifferently, although Loki has many problems, but Thor also has many problems, so why can't the person who inherits the throne be Loki? Saying that, Lin Fan's gaze became sharp, but it flashed away. Then he said in a faint tone. Is it just because Loki is adopted? Poof. Hearing this, the ancient mage suddenly froze. She couldn't help but laugh directly. Regarding the conversation between Odin and Lin Fan, she didn't want to participate, after all, it was a private matter. But what Lin Fan said was to the point of Odin. A word of adoption made her endure it. In fact, she also knows very well. Odin's 2 sons have many problems, and it is very troublesome to solve. After all, it is difficult for Qing officials to break family affairs. But knowing is one thing, saying it is another. She always has to worry about Odin's face. But Lin Fan was different, directly piercing the truth in front of Odin. All this is simply because of Odin's favoritism. But that's fine. Make the problem clear, no matter what Odin needs, just come up with the corresponding remuneration. As long as it can impress Lin Fan, then this matter will be done. And different from the ancient mage's liveliness. Broken by Lin Fan's thoughts, Odin suddenly became stupid. In particular, the ancient mage laughed at him. Think of his god King Odin, who has suffered this humiliation. This is not to make him unable to get off the stage. But the point is that there is nothing wrong with what people say, and he can't argue at all. Lin Xiaoyu is really fast. Odin sighed, a little helpless to Lin Fan's directness. Because he does have that in mind. Although he didn't want to admit it, Thor was his own son after all, and naturally, he was the first in line to inherit the throne. Perhaps Loki rejected them because he noticed his attitude. It can only be said that these troubles are all sins of his own making. Shaking his head secretly, Odin looked straight at Lin Fan and said in a deep voice, "Dare to ask Lin Xiaoyu what is his opinion?" "Opinions are not available." Lin Fan waved his hand and said in an indifferent tone, "In my opinion, Loki is the best candidate for the throne compared to sharpening Thor, at least more suitable than the other two." "But Loki Odin subconsciously wanted to refute. But Lin Fan waved his hand and interrupted directly, taking care of himself. "I know you're in a hurry, but don't worry, and I'm just saying my opinion." Odin was silent for a while, without nodding. The ancient mage on the side also cast a curious gaze. She wanted to hear Lin Fan's opinion. After all, even she has nothing to do about the palace fight drama of the Odin family. For the king, be ruthless on the outside and benevolent on the inside. Meeting the gaze of the two, Lin Fan directly said his opinion. Both Odin and the ancient mage agreed. But none of them spoke, but looked at Lin Fan, wanting to hear Lin Fan's next words. And Lin Fan also continued, "In my opinion, it doesn't matter who the throne is handed to, what matters is how to do the above 2 points. So Odin, God King, can completely let Thor and Loki compete fairly. Since Thor likes to fight, let him fight enough. Anyway, you Asgard have many enemies. Loki likes to play tricks, although he is only clever, but he is just right for dealing with internal affairs. 2 brothers, one inside and one outside, isn't that exactly the situation you want to see?" Lin Fan looked at Odin with a smile. And what he said also made the two fall into deep thought, inexplicably feeling very reasonable. "But I have a question." After some silence, Odin asked in a deep voice, "Even if this is feasible, there is still no exact candidate for the throne, and the 2 brothers will still fight non-stop. So, can this be blamed?" Lin Fan said with a certain expression of disgust on his face, "Read violent novels, just go to Phelan Novel Network. Isn't it because of your own problem?" "Me? The Odin people are stupid. How can I say that the person who has the problem is myself? Is it really me who clowns?" Resisting the urge to refute, he quickly asked, "What's wrong with me?" "Huh?" Lin Fan sneered and mocked, "The throne inheritance is already very sensitive, you don't make things clear, but let Thor and Loki's grudge deepen. Do you think you are ready to be a father and even a father?" As soon as this remark came out, Odin was completely speechless. His whole body fell into deep thought. Lin Fan's words, although he did not hide his mockery, but every sentence was word for word. And he finally understood that it was really him who had the problem. Yes, how nice would it be if he could make it clear? Originally, he didn't have much selfishness, and if Loki could really protect the people of Asgard, it was not impossible to hand over the throne to the other party. And if it can really be like Lin Fan said, Asgard's future can be expected. He had no doubt that Thor was decisive in killing his enemies. Loki can also manage a country well. In the past, he always felt that the two had shortcomings, subconsciously favored Sol, and felt that Sol was the best heir. But he never imagined that he could let the two join forces to run the country. And it's good for everyone to make it clear. In this way, the 2 brothers will not be saved from continuing their infighting. As for the final attribution of the throne? He, the God King, is not dead yet, and when he dies, I don't know how long it will take. He can fully adjust the 2 brothers in the process. After realizing this, Odin suddenly became excited, and the smile on his face could not be hidden. He looked at Lin Fan gratefully, and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you Lin Xiaoyu for your guidance." Listening to Jun's words, "It's better than me entangled for 1,000 years. Just raise your hand." Lin Fan waved his hand disapprovingly. And at this moment, the voice of the Queen of Red suddenly sounded in his ears. "Master, Tony, they're in danger." "Huh?" Lin Fan frowned slightly when he heard this. Didn't Tony and Banner go to grab vibranium? What dangers can they encounter? Ulysses Crow is nothing more than an ant. Tony has a nano armor body, Banner can summon the Hulk at any time, can't deal with an arms dealer, right? At this moment, the Red Queen's words immediately answered his doubts. "It's someone from Wakanda." The Red Queen quickly explained, originally, Tony had already caught Ulysses Crow. But the people of Wakanda suddenly appeared, that Panther is still quite powerful, and they still have fighters. But rest assured, Master, I have hacked into the control system of the fighter. But I don't know what to do with that Panther. With the Red Queen's narration, Lin Fan finally understood the cause and effect. The one who can threaten Tony is Wakanda. But in front of the Red Queen, even Wakanda's intelligent network cannot stop the Red Queen from hacking. Since this matter has been controlled, there is nothing to rush. After ignoring Hong, he turned to look at Gui Mage and said, Mage, Odin, there are still some things to do next. If there is nothing else, then I will go first. Saying that, Lin Fan got up and prepared to leave. And slow. Seeing this, Odin quickly grabbed Lin Fan. Looking at Lin Fan with a grateful face, he was a little embarrassed, but his tone was very sincere. Actually, there is one more thing to ask for. Please say. Lin Fan nodded and was non-committal. He flicked off Odin's hand imperceptibly, and stood there indifferently, looking like you said I listened. Ahem, here's the thing. Odin coughed lightly, and quickly said, Xiao's suggestion is good, but I have already exiled Thor to Earth, so this test has to continue. But I'm worried that the two brothers will have a bigger conflict. So if I can, I hope Xiao can make a move, preferably to help Thor complete this test. Of course, Loki's side, I will personally find him to explain this matter clearly. Speaking his request, Odin earnestly said, Please, Lin Xiaoyu. Well. Hearing what Odin said, Lin Fan, who had expected it earlier, groaned. He certainly couldn't waste his time in vain. Even if he is 5.9 in the process, he may trigger the system to get a reward, but he can get it even if he does not promise Odin. So it's okay to ask him to help, but you have to pay the price. Lin Xiaoyu, please be sure to promise to help. Seeing that Lin Fan wanted to refuse, Odin was suddenly anxious. This matter really had Lin Fan's horse. A few words could make him empowered, enough to see Lin Fan's resourcefulness, and he very much hoped that Lin Fan could help. Without the slightest hesitation, he was busy coming up with the prepared payment. This was still what the ancient mage reminded him to prepare in advance. Originally, for Lin Fan, he was just curious about why he could make Ancient One mage pay so much attention, but in fact, he didn't pay attention to it at the beginning. But at this time, he admitted that he was one-sided, and he was really a hero out of a teenager. If you can pay some price, let Thor and Loki reconcile, and allow Asgard to continue. Then he is definitely 10,000 promises. Yikes. Odin waved his big hand, and 3 items suddenly appeared. It was something he had chosen from the palace treasury. Moreover, he was afraid that Lin Fan would dislike it too shabby, so he directly opened the palace treasury remotely and reselected 2 new treasures. This is? Looking at those 3 objects, the ancient mage on the side was secretly shocked. She didn't expect Odin to be so extravagant. Because even she, when she saw these 3 treasures, she couldn't help but feel her heartbeat. It can also be seen that Odin is really very concerned about this matter. Infinity Gauntlet? At the same time, Lin Fan also raised his eyebrows. At this time, among the 3 treasures, the golden grooved fist holster in the middle immediately attracted his attention. Because of this treasure, he was so familiar that he couldn't be more familiar. Isn't that the Infinity Gauntlet that Thanos uses to snap his fingers? You must know that in the original plot, Thanos wiped out half of the life in the universe with a snap of his fingers. This scene made Lin Fan still remember it well.